What you're about to watch contains explicit language, adult themes, violence, and may not be suitable for viewers under 18. Viewer discretion is strongly advised.
Hello, people of the internet. My name is JD Shadow. So we are talking about the Channel Awesome drama again. A drama that keeps on giving. The drama that just continues to have more and more stuff added onto it. And to be quite honest, I don't know how much more I can really talk about this, because every time I believe that there is going to be the end of the drama, either something new comes up or something else happens that actually changes the entire dynamic. Now, before I go any further, I want to exemplify a few things. One, this is going to probably be one of the longest videos I've ever done, and I don't know how long this is going to be. So if you are not for long videos, I would suggest that you watch this in parts, maybe 20-minute parts. Second of all is that this is going to delve into some sensitive subject matter, so please be advised of that. And because this is continuing to evolve and change throughout the days, some of the stuff you'll hear now may be outdated by the time you watch this. So I cannot guarantee that I'm going to get every single last detail out of this drama explained, because it just keeps developing. Lastly, there is going to be some opinions that are going to be disagreed upon by some people, and these are just my own opinions. Also, there are going to be some things that I talk about that I do not talk about on a regular basis, if at all, on this channel. However, they were brought up in the document, the Not So Awesome document, that I'm pretty sure everybody is familiar with by now, that started this whole thing, and our response rebuttal that Channel Awesome posted onto their website that is the subject of a lot of controversy and a lot of ridicule from both sides of the spectrum. So I will do my best to try to employ some responsibility and some objectivity when it comes to talking about those subjects. However, I know I cannot please everybody, so if there is something that I say that is going to be disagreed upon by some people, I don't know how I can help that, because again, this is just how I see it all going down. If you need a bit of a refresher course, 1 month ago, a group of former Channel Awesome employees came together and formed what is now called the Not So Awesome document, or the NSA. Listen to that acronym. I don't know if it's just coincidence or not, but it is ironic in the very least. All the grievances, all the shortcomings, all of everything else that they believe Channel Awesome caused them is outlined in this document. It is a 70-page document that hosts some names such as Lankara, Todd in the Shadows, Obscurus Lupa, Holly Brown, and Lindsay Ellis, otherwise known as the Nostalgia Chick. A lot of them are saying stuff like they're not getting paid for their content, they were unfairly terminated from their employment there, and some of those are kind of petty, and some of them are small in the eyes of some people. However, there were some major problems that were said to have happened there, including the acts of harassment, and the worst of them all, a case that someone had sexually assaulted people. Now, we're going to get to that in just a moment. However, Channel Awesome came out with a preliminary apology, and even though it had a few lines and a few paragraphs to it, there was one particular line that everybody seems to want to quote. "I'm sorry you felt that way." One of the most out of context lines in the entire document, because there were a few other things that made me suspect that they were talking about what they ended up talking about in their formal response rebuttal. This was not a full-fledged apology. This was more of a rebuttal, and some people were unhappy that it wasn't just a blanket apology. However, we're going to talk about why it shouldn't have been in this video, because there were a few people that have been called into question about what they had actually said in the Not So Awesome document, the 70-page one, not the TLDR version that I had read on the special report. One of the quote-unquote big ones was, of course, Lindsay Ellis, otherwise known as the Nostalgia Chick. Although she is not the only one, she is one of the ones that has one of probably the most damning testimony, it would seem. However, her testimony should be called into question when we talk about one other name she brought up, and I don't know why she did bring it up, but we'll get that in a minute. Also, Holly Brown and Mascaras Lupa have also been called into question about some of what they have said. Of course, those three have said that they just wanted a full-fledged apology. They see that as more of a combative move than an apologetic move. Although Channel Awesome is saying that they have not committed the crimes that they were being accused of, and they have acted upon certain things. However, this has not satisfied some people and has led to the exodus of some of their subscribers and most of their talent, most notably being the Angry Joe show, which has said that he was going to take things off of Channel Awesome following this controversy. As a matter of fact, the only two that are left are Guru Larry and Brad Joe's The Cinema Snob. Doug Walker and Rob Walker were thought to have left Channel Awesome, however, they have now posted a new video and that has shown us that they are in no hurry to leave. And yes, this has polarized and divided the fan base of Channel Awesome, in which people are blaming Mike Picard for just about everything and saying that they need to apologize and they really need to save what is the sinking ship that had crashed into the iceberg. And others are saying, wait a minute, this is not being looked at objectively enough, and some people within the Not So Awesome document need this answer for a few things. Now, obviously, you probably know by now that I'm going to look at things a little bit more objectively in regards to this document. However, I have my own opinions and my own bias as well, mainly with Lindsay Ellis, mainly with those people who she was associated with, because there is something I need to discuss when I get to that whole thing. I have also stated in the past that I am not a fan of the contract that they had shown within the Our Response document, in which stating that any crossovers were the sole property of Channel Awesome. Now, of course, that is a legally binding contract, and as far as the laws are concerned, you are allowed to do something like that. But if that is the case, then perhaps it is the laws that need to be changed in order to make stuff like that be illegal. That is something that unfortunately I've seen and heard of a lot of people do within companies, and that is something that should be addressed, and probably I would hope that this should shed some light on those types of business practices, and they should be dealt with immediately. Also, even though you could probably see some underlines in some of the other stuff that they have said, you could probably take what they said about the communication problems being a problem that they were trying to address at face value. At the very least, you can probably commend them for doing that much and probably saying, yes, we understand that the communication problems were something that we needed to address, and we are addressing them. Now, whether or not they could have said something more about that and gone into more detail is left up to the eye of the beholder. However, let's not look a gift horse in the mouth there. If you're looking for an apology, at the very least, you can commend them for at least addressing that that was a problem. And I am belaboring all of this because I want to show you that I myself don't think that the response was that perfect. And I take that into the notion that Mike Picard was trying to be Vince McMahon in this sort of sense, trying to be the I'll do it all myself instead of getting a proper PR person to handle this mess. That having been said, however, there are a lot of things that they have shown chat logs for, that they have shown what we are calling receipts in this sense, because when we show those things, it brings a lot of things into perspective. And when you do that, you also show proof. And it's because of that that we're going to try to look at some of these things objectively. And we're going to go into detail about what some of those chat logs have actually shown in detail. And that is why we're going to be taking our time with this. And again, as I said, if this is too long of a video for you to watch in one sitting, I am not going to blame you, and I'm going to suggest that you use the YouTube continue watching feature. Remember, when you stop a video on YouTube halfway through watching it, then when you come back to it, YouTube will try its best in order to let you resume watching from when you stopped. So if you do not have enough time or enough patience to watch this video all at at once, you are more than happy and are free to resume watching when you next get the time. Though I implore you to watch the video in its entirety, that way you understand the full context of what I am trying to bring to your attention. Now, they only talked about the more egregious and serious claims in the document that they believe were the more serious claims in the document, and I would not blame them in doing that, because if they did that, that would be a much bigger apology / rebuttal, and it would be something that we would be still reading to this day. Also, I do understand that while some of the more egregious things were made by the female contributors to the document, I believe that is just a coincidence, and Lindsay Ellis should not be complaining about that, because they were the ones that leveled on the more serious claims. Of course, as you'll see later, Lindsay Ellis and some of the people she was associated with within Channel Awesome had a history of using that sort of authoritarian identity politics in order to gain political points in which she would not otherwise be able to gain on their own merit. And in case you do not know by now, I am no fan of hers in any stretch of the imagination. Of course, Channel Awesome's apology / rebuttal didn't do themselves any favors by saying that everybody on the document were quote-unquote vindictive in nature. I didn't think they were all vindictive in nature. Linkara was one of the more tamer ones in that document, and I do believe that if he were to work something out with Channel Awesome, then maybe he could move on from it and put that all behind him. However, that having been said, I do believe that I understand where the person who was writing it is coming from. They are believing that the world is caving upon them, and it just seems that it's a never-ending battle between him and people who just want his head and will stop at nothing in order to get them. Trust me, I've been there. I know what it feels like, and sometimes those type of words just come out when you're feeling like your back is against the wall and somebody's trying to push you through the wall. But in a sense, I could probably understand the other side as well, saying that Channel Awesome should come out with a more fluid apology or a more fluid rebuttal in addressing a lot of the other things that they have been saying. Although I do believe that they could do that, I do understand why they did choose to do that, because again, this is a 70-page document. That having been said, let's get to the more egregious things that are said in the document. Now we're going to get to the meat of Lindsay Ellis' testimony in just a moment, but let's first get to what everybody is calling the elephant in the room, that being a sexual assaulter thing. Now, I am aware that the incident that occurred in which Channel Awesome is referring to is not the same one as the Jane Doe account that is in the NSA documents. However, that too has some issues to be addressed. That is the one in which she had the physical age of 18 but the mental age of 16. That is a case that I do believe has a lot of question marks behind it. And though I am not trying to blame the victim in this sort of regard, I don't know if we can consider that a sexual assault case. I do not know whether or not anybody who went to Channel Awesome, assuming they did, had said who the perpetrator would have been. We can only assume that it was Wario in this sense, and I think there are people who have said that it indeed is. However, was there enough to warrant action being taken? Was there enough there to say that that was indeed a case of sexual assault / rape / pedophilia? That is a squeamish thing to have to talk about, because we don't know where that falls on the legal spectrum. And if that was the case and Channel Awesome did something to him at that point, and it turns out that the court of law had ruled that not sexual assault, then what would happen is that a wrongful termination lawsuit would be put into place. Also, take a listen to what Count Chocula had said concerning when Wario at MagFest started acting weird. If they were a repeat offender, if he was a repeat offender, I don't know if he would be acting as weird as he did, though I am not the expert in any sort of regard as to how sexual predators work, how they act, how they are. Maybe he rightfully got a guilty conscience, and because of that, it led to his old-timely demise at the hands of a self-inflicted gunshot. This is why I keep saying that we have to be extremely careful when we're talking about these sort of issues, because you never know. The bottom line is I do believe that Channel Channel Awesome did work as hard as they possibly can given the information that they had been provided in order to make the right decisions at the right time. I do not believe that the perpetrator's name should have been kept secret. One, because that could have taken that person off the streets, but two, if it was somebody that they had known, then perhaps Jew Warrior might still be alive today. Maybe Jew Warrior had a guilty conscience, as I said, and that's what probably led him to want to commit suicide. Perhaps not only would he be alive today, but perhaps he would have gotten the help that he had needed for quite some time, and perhaps that is something that we would be discussing even to this day. Now, when you look at this testimony, when you look at Channel Awesome's response to this whole thing, please keep in mind the original complaint. Please keep in mind what the original complaint was. The original complaint was that it took them a year in order to deal with the sexual assaulter. That it took them a year in order to address it and to subsequently get rid of him. Their side of the story is that it did not take them a year, but only 3 weeks in order to address the situation and come to their conclusion. The reason why we say the dates are very important and why we need to be aware of what the original complaint was is because of the change in narrative. If you have noticed, ever since this document came out, ever since this response came out, the discussion and the narrative for this whole case has swapped. You have seen now that Count Chocula posted a video corroborating this story and putting a location to the date in which this had occurred. Now, by now, everybody is aware that the person in question to have committed this act is Justin Carmichael, aka Jew Warrior. The place that he said this happened was at MagFest 2013, and it was 1 year later that he had committed suicide, maybe shorter than that. I don't remember the exact date in which he had done so. There were several people who had shown their grievances and showed their memorials to somebody they considered to be a great friend. However, the nature of these allegations and the person who has done it has left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths right now. Now, myself being someone who had not been familiar with his work, have not been familiar with his channel, I can say that I could probably look at things more objectively than anybody else could. However, that being said, I can also understand the emotional aspect being involved here. I can understand why this is something that is upsetting a lot of people. And plus, even if those allegations were true and it is 9/10 of the way proven that it is true, it is very hard to just say, okay, he would no longer be your friend. That is not easy to do. That is not an easy thing to do. That's probably why Brad Jones has not left Channel Awesome yet, and I don't think he should leave Channel Awesome yet, if at all. It is very hard to just say, okay, I'm going to throw my friend to the curb, under the bus, because that shows in my mind that you were not a good friend to begin with. You want to find out what is causing that. You want to say, hey, what the hell is wrong with you? However, you don't want to just abandon a friend and make him just yesterday's garbage when they have seemed to do everything for you and be able to do everything they could in order to help you out, and vice versa. It is not an easy thing to just go ahead and do. I don't care who is trying to tell you otherwise, that is not the case. But if you take a look at what people were saying now about Count Chocula's testimony about the Jew Warrior's sex allegations, you can see that now people are calling for him to take that video down. They're taking him to task for showing the time and location in which this had occurred, which corroborates with Channel Awesome's side of the coin with their side of the story. This is very suspicious. Hum de la hum, if you will. If you will notice, as I said, the people who were talking about the time that it took for Channel Awesome in order to do something about this person, all of a sudden they are going completely silent about that part of the narrative, about that whole complaint. Now all we hear is, how dare you post the date of the logs, and Count Chocula should take down that video. My whole counter argument to that is an obvious one. It should be obvious to anyone with a brain. How in the world is Channel Awesome supposed to disprove the original complaints if they do not list the date? How in the world would Channel Awesome be able to show that they are invalid fact factual in what they're showing you if Count Chocula's video does not exist. Make no mistake about it. There is a lot more to this whole thing that I'm pretty sure people are going to be reminded of and shocked to know that they forgot about some of these things or never heard about these things. However, when you hear about them, you will no doubt know as to why I am saying these things now. It is because what if Count Chocula took that video down? There is no way to prove that Channel Awesome is telling the entire truth here. It is that video that shows that Channel Awesome is telling the truth there. To me, that is an effort to censor evidence. That is a effort, in my estimation, to censor the truth being out there. To censor that there was, in fact, an effort by Channel Awesome, a swift effort to respond to those claims. Now, whether or not there were other claims that Channel Awesome did not respond to, I do not know of that for sure because we do not know the entire story of those claims. But I have a sneaking suspicion that they were not expecting for Channel Awesome to come out with logs, in which I do believe they expected that they had. Once they came out, they had a response to it. They had a ready response saying, how dare you come out with a video that shows that you indeed know that they had acted with due diligence within their power within the law. So now the switch in narrative, now the switch in what they are complaining about. And I do believe that they might have known what they needed to do in order to counter the claim. I do believe that they had every intention to make sure the Channel Awesome burned for that particular issue, regardless of what they did. They had some sort of entrapment plan there. How else would Channel Awesome be able to disprove the notion that they only took 3 weeks instead of the full entire year if they didn't show the date? How else would they have done it? I would like to know that. I would like to hear about that. I would like to be able to have proof of that. And of course, while all of this is going on, the victim that was in the middle of all of this is being used even more so. And I extremely regret that it has happened to her. I extremely regret that this is going on with her, that she is put in the middle of this, that she is someone who is being used as this football of sorts. And I do apologize to her that she is being used as this political football here. She went through a tremendously horrifying ordeal, and this should not be used like this. And I know that I am putting my own opinions to this, and I know that it might look like I'm doing the same thing, but believe me, it is a hard thing to try to separate. But I do believe that they, being some of the main people involved with this not so awesome document, to use her as a political football, that they are intending to use her in that sort of way. And I don't know if they have their best interest in mind here. I want to be extremely clear here. What happened to her was not her fault. Whatever occurred to harm her, whatever occurred in order to make her feel as if she was a subhuman, is not her fault. It was the fault of the person who had committed that act upon her, nothing more. She is not being put on trial here. She is not the one being put on trial here. I do believe Count Jack when he says there was something more to the story on Holly's end, on Holly Brown's end, and this is where we get to her part of the testimony. But if it ends up that they were trying to entrap Channel Awesome in this sort of regard, to where either way they do things, the people in the NSA document do win, then they should look in the mirror and be ashamed of themselves for what they were trying to do on the back of this sort of situation. This is something that no one should have to be put in the middle of. This is something that is deplorable. It is reprehensible. It is almost unforgivable, but I do believe there's always a redemption road for everybody. But it is not stuff to be taken lightly, and it sure as hell should not be used as a political or a social football to be kicked around like that. And if it seems as though I'm doing the same thing, I do apologize. It is not my intention, nor is it ever my intention, because if anybody has followed me throughout the years would know know, I don't just post something for the page clicks. I don't just put up clickbait stuff. I actually do want to talk about these topics. I actually do want to have discussion. That is something that makes me want to continue doing this type of content. It is why bloggers like myself have continued to do what we do. It's because not only is it beneficial for us on the financial end, of course, but it's also beneficial for people to be able to have those types of people who truly do believe that the content they're putting out is their true beliefs. It is not something that is phoned in. So in that sense, I don't intend to use that woman's ordeal as a football in any sort of regard, in any sort of adjective, in any sort of metaphor. Now, before we go into Holly Brown's testimony, I do want to bring up in brief Obscurus Lupa's testimony, Allison Prager's testimony. Now, before we go any further, yes, I do recall that she had some issues with Spoonie and that she had him fired or something like that. I don't know the entire story of this. I do also recall that she had said that she apologized to Spoonie for what had happened there, but we don't know the time and place that it happened. So again, I am not the expert at knowing everything about that. I have heard though that she had something else that was pinned to her, something else that she has the answer for, and that is maybe another firing that she had done. I don't know the whole details of that. I just heard that throughout the Reddit forums, so maybe somebody can no doubt enlighten me on what had happened in that scenario. But one of the things that I also keep hearing about is that she is talking out of both sides of her mouth, and what I mean by that is that she says she wants an apology, she wants for the walkers to apologize to her, and she would be able to move on from this. However, even though she says, hey, I want to stop talking about it, she does whatever she can to poke the bear on the very next tweet, or so it would seem. This is something that makes me suspicious about the real reason she even got involved in this, let alone being one of the main people who this document was focused on. Holly Brown is another person who I am pretty suspicious about, because I have heard that she had been a sort of back and forth person in regards to what she said in opposing to what she actually did, that she had double talk of her own. Count Jackler has said that Holly was the one who stonewalled him into not delving further into the issues surrounding Drew Wario. However, she had posted something on her Twitter page to say that it wasn't her stonewalling Count Jackler, but she wasn't able to give him the name or the time or any exquisite details about what had occurred, which to me kind of sounds like the very definition of stonewalling, the very definition of her saying that it's not a very good idea for him to go about and investigate this any further, that she wasn't willing to divulge the information, or maybe she didn't have the information, more along the lines that she wasn't willing to divulge the information for one reason or another. And I'm not sure about that story in of itself. Sure, she posted the chat logs, or the screenshot of the chat logs of her and Count Jackler talking about this. However, the channel Awesome response log also shows a chat log of Holly and Doug and Rob talking about the gallbladder situation, and it shows that she wasn't fired for that reason, though she did end up posting a screenshot of something involving a chat log, although there was only 3 messages that were shown in there, and it remains to be seen what the context of that was. I would hope that she would have context, because this seems to be rather suspicious as to where this came from. I would assume these are Skype chat logs, because the format of the timestamp and the name screams at me of Skype chat log format. Although the reason why I think it's kind of suspicious is because Holly does not actually show the messages as they appeared in Skype. It seems like she copied and pasted them onto the Apple iPhone notepad version, whatever they called the notepad on their phones or their OS systems. I do not know how much I can buy that. Keep in mind too that Holly Brown has been known to be a questionable person. That guy Curtis has called her a quote-unquote garbage person in his video. And it had seemed that some people do not take Holly at face value, that she is known to be kind of two-faced, although I don't know how true that is because I don't know the person. I'm only going by accounts of what other people have said. However, be it as it may, it does seem as though some people think Holly is a very questionable person, and she should not be taken at face value, and as such, when someone does not think of you that highly, they are not going to believe the words that you are speaking. Now, it does seem like she is a bit apologetic and is trying to at least balance out those two things. However, knowing what some people have said about Holly and about her ethic and about how she operates, it is easy to see why some people might have their doubts about what she is saying and if she is sincere about those apologies. Also, there are some people who have said that she is the one who hid the Jew Wario situation from Channel Awesome, that it was her who knew everything about what was going on and decided to not tell Channel Awesome, which is a very telling thing about some of the things that people have said about this whole document in of itself, that now people are willing to look after each other, but back then when all this has actually occurred, when this all was alleged to have actually occurred, no one couldn't be asked to help anybody else with their own problems. Only a few people decided to help those people out who felt wronged by the goings on of this company. It would make someone suspicious as to whether or not anybody even told Channel Awesome about the first allegation until the second incident actually occurred. Or maybe they did tell Channel Awesome and they didn't divulge who it was, so they were working with their hands tied behind their back on that scenario. Or maybe they just didn't have enough information in order to do anything about it. Or it's what I said before, that Jane Doe account, not the one that they had posted onto their response, but the other one that was posted in the NSA document, that the other one does seem as though there are some details that don't make really too much sense in the realms of a sexual assault case or a pedophilia case in that estimation. And speaking of people who get that label a pedophile, let's get to what I believe is the most telling thing of all. That's something I believe is not correct in this Channel Awesome NSA document. It is Lindsay Ellis's testimony, because quite frankly, I don't trust her at all. Now, if you do not know the controversy surrounding her, she was a part of the Chez Apocalypse group. Apologies if I'm mispronouncing the word Chez. This is the clique that Count Jackla had said was basically in full control of a lot of the things at Channel Awesome. That they had Channel Awesome by the purse strings, and they wanted for everybody in Channel Awesome to agree with their political ideology. And if you didn't follow it at every single letter, then you were getting labeled, you were getting ignored, you were getting all sorts of things. I had pointed you to the David Pockman Authoritarian Left video on my last special report, and I want to point that to you again because he explains it far better than I ever could. If you do not know what I am talking about when we're talking about the authoritarian left, there are certain other acronyms that you can use and certain epithets you could use to describe who I am talking about. However, according to Count Jackala, and I have to agree with him on this point because of what I can tell you about this, Chez Apocalypse was comprised of quite a few people who agreed with that authoritarian left stature to a militant, radical, extreme degree. These are the kinds of people who some people would say are easily offended to a fault in a effort in order to gain publicity from their oversensitivity. And a few of those people involved Lindsay Ellis, who was known as Nostalgia Chick, Todd in His Shadows, and one other name that she brings up in the NSA document that is also a part of Chez Apocalypse, or was a part of Chez Apocalypse, that being Dan Olson. Now, if you do not know who Dan Olson is, but that name sounded familiar to you, he went by another name, Foldable Human and Foldable Ideas. He was a Channel Awesome employee who had a trial period that lasted up until, we would believe, is September 2015, and it started around the end of 2014 when the most relevant parts of this document and the most relevant parts that I'm about to discuss actually occurred. Now, she did state that right after the incident involving when Mike Picard called her concerning such things about what Dan Olson had did, she had left along with Cal Calgren, the person that Count Jackla brings up in his first video, and Dan Olson. Now, we're going to go through some of the things that she has said, and we're going to unpack things one by one, because I do believe that there is going to be things that we have to go into detail about. So please be advised of that. And here's where I'm going to say that I'm going to have to read these ad verbatim, so apologies if some of the topics I bring up are going to offend a lot of people. There is no way I can get around this. So with that having been said, the first one I want to get to, the first big complaint she had was about To Boldly Flee, in which Doug had a sexual innuendo joke that she called a rape joke, the 60 of 9 character, and I am going to show you the actual scene in this video, although there's going to be no sound, and the sound is part of the whole situation. Now, she had called that a rape joke, and while I do think the joke did fall flat, it didn't really seem as though it was very original. It was more along the lines of a cliche joke. I think in this sense you have to leave it up to interpretation, because some people might not see it as a rape joke but as a sexual innuendo joke, in which the person that is on the other end is not exactly being raped, but in a sense they are just playing rough with one another. And in the response from Channel Awesome, they do show a log in which Lindsay not only agrees with the scene but is trying to make it better in their own terms. And in the way that I consider Lindsay Ellis to be an outright liar in a lot of things, I do have a suspicion that Channel Awesome has some leeway here. But the other aspect of it is that Doug was willing to meet her halfway at the very least. This shows that he was willing to budge on the specifics, and she was willing to agree to do the part in which she was transformed into the 60 of 9 character, with that scene playing a huge role in that. At that point, if you are complaining about something in which there's not only a log of something saying that you are going to make things better by putting your own spin on it, but also you are showing your concerns and they are willing to actually listen to your concerns, I don't know if I have much sympathy for her after all of that. It was a quote-unquote toned down version in the final cut, she said, but the evidence might suggest otherwise. Keep in mind as well that she had her own rape joke that she posted onto her own channel that she has since tried to whitewash, that being the quote-unquote rape rap that I am showing to you right now. Now, that might be more tame than the To Boldly Free scenario, but you'll get where I'm going here. She posted this at around the same time, I do believe, and it's because of this that I don't know if I have any sympathy for her about that whole idea when it was her that came up with this rape rap. Now, you could definitely think that it was her condemning the usage of rape jokes, but that is not very clear in that scenario. In that sense, I don't know if I can side with her on this point. She continues on to say, quote, during this time, there was also a streak of harassment against female contributors. The worst case that involved me resulted in an extended case with the NYPD. This was not the only incident of harassment that went unremarked upon by Channel Awesome. There was a rash of harassment against Channel Awesome producers between 2013 and 2014, mostly women, which was never acknowledged or condemned by Channel Awesome. Now, a bit of a reminder to stick a pin in the whole issue of harassment against CA producers, because we're going to come back to that, because as I said before, she is one of the authoritarian leftists. She's one of the more extreme cases of that, and there is a certain aspect of them that I do believe that will play a huge role in what she considers harassment against herself and others, only if they side with her on every single thing. However, let's get to the NYPD thing, in which she is saying that she called the NYPD. Now, not going to talk about any of the other cases and just focus on the specific one, because I would like to know the sequence of events here. Did she try to go to Channel Awesome first, or Mike McCord first, or did she try to go to the NYPD directly? If it was the latter, then I do believe that Channel Awesome is thereby unable to do anything about it. In other words, what does Lindsay Ellis expect for Channel Awesome to be able to do? It is already in the hands of somebody with much more authority than Channel Awesome could ever have. And in that sense, they don't need to get involved because the law enforcement is involved in that scenario. They don't have to do anything because you have already went above them. You went above their heads. There's nothing they can do about it. What do you expect them to do? And this is a theme that's going to play a role in a lot of what she has said. What do you expect Channel Awesome to do in any of these scenarios? If she went to the NYPD first, then that is game, set, match. There is no way that she can blame Channel Awesome for doing nothing when she never went to them to begin with, if she went over their heads. If she went to them first and they said, hey, go to the NYPD about this has nothing to do with us or any of our employees, then I could see where she's coming from, but at the same time, that also sparks as to what do you want them to do? What do you think they should do? Unless it's something at their cons or something at their panels in which they can control some of the audience and they can dictate who gets in and who gets out, and they can dictate their forms, which they've shown that they have tried to help her to do, then you know what? I don't know what she expected them to do beyond that. What else could they have done? Now, I'm going to read the next 2 points together because this gets into why I have made this video in the first place, why this is going to get pretty long. This is going to get into some very graphic details, so please bear that in mind. This goes on to say, quote, the breaking point for me came much later. In late 2014, Channel Awesome brought on some new content producers, several of which I vouched for. One of these was Dan Olson. In December of 2014, Dan did some investigative journalism work, which resulted in him becoming the target of organized harassment and conspiracy theorists. Dan posted an article on Medium about 8chan's willful complicity in child pornography. This resulted in an organized campaign to defame Dan Olson, declaring him a child pornographer for doing journalistic work about child pornography. The conspiracy theorists continue to this day. She goes on to say, this happened right before Christmas. On December 23rd, 2014, I was driving home to visit my family in Tennessee. I was about 2 hours from the Virginia-Tennessee border when I get a call from Mike McCord, who was absolutely livid about something Dan Olson had done. Predictably, these organized harassment brigades started a campaign emailing Mike McCord, and rather than seeing it for what it was, he blamed the victim. And instead of calling Dan to find out what happened, McCord called me while I was in the car driving home to visit my family for Christmas. Because in McCord's mind, I was apparently Dan's keeper for having vouched for him when Channel Awesome was picking up new talent. Okay, let's get to the first things first. About who called who? Lindsay Ellis is lying. And there's a very big piece of evidence that we're going to get to here in just a moment that will prove that she is lying, completely lying about who called who and how did McCord know about what was going on. And also, please also stick a pin in Dan Olson and the child pornography and the 8chan names, because we're going to come back to those too. We're going to come back to all of that because yes, this is the big sticking point. And yes, I am familiar with the story. I am familiar with what transpired there. Now I'm going to go into detail about what exactly happened. There is a reason why she didn't go into detail about what that conspiracy theory actually was. The last 2 points I'm also going to read together, and this is where I'm going to bring up a term in which is going to probably get me into a bit of trouble for even reading what it is ad verbatim. However, please keep an open mind when I go to read this, because I usually don't say that term on this channel. The last time I did that ad verbatim is when I covered the Dean Takahashi Cuphead saga, and the reason why I don't is because it is a polarizing term. Just the sound of the term is enough to drive people insane, and it is a very polarizing subject. It is a very polarizing thing to have to go into, but like most of political issues anymore, things do get murky and things do get polarizing now more so than ever before. It is a very delicate thing to dance around stuff like this. But let's go into what she said. Said, quote, "This is not the first time that one or several producers was being targeted by harassment campaigns. Name Channel Awesome never stood up for anyone unless it was directly related to them being demonetized. Hashtag where's the fair use? Where is that going to go on the back of all of this? One has to wonder." But she goes on, "They stood silent during the Gamergate." Well, I don't know why she put "the" there. "They stayed silent while many of their female contributors over the years were targeted by Gamergate. Their business model implies that it is more important for them to be uncontroversial than it is for them to stand behind their contributors who are being targeted. To be clear, Dan did nothing wrong, but was blamed by McCall, and by extension so was I, for attracting quote-unquote controversy from people who are somehow threatened by outing websites that enable child pornographers. I left a few days later, as did Cal Calgren and Dan Olson." The actual date that she posted is under contention as well, but we'll get to the evidence that suggests that perhaps that is the case. However, let's get to why she is not telling the entire truth. First of all, the term that I'm talking about, let's take things one step at a time. There was no group. It was the name of a controversy. The name of a controversy that had something to do with two things: transparency in gaming media and harassment of women online in gaming. Those are both important topics to discuss. Women, or any minority for that matter, should never have to face harassment online by anybody, regardless of their gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, race, you name it. They should not be subject to that kind of vitriolic harassment. On the other hand, though, we should be pushing for transparency in all forms of media, whether it be in gaming media, whether it be in politics, whether it be in entertainment, and so on and so forth. And if there's somebody who you know on a personal level and you're covering something that they have done, you should be obligated to disclose that information due to your readers, followers, watchers, whatever, knowing that you might have a degree of bias that would not normally be there in an objective review or column. I think that is a fair thing to talk about. I think that's the fair thing to strive for in all forms of media, in all spectrums. However, there were people who were on all fronts, on all sides of this controversy. There was no group, but there were individuals who were belonging to political ideologies, and there were also people who were generally harassed online, and some people who were burned also by the lack of transparency in these situations. So you can understand the sensitive feelings that a lot of people had to this topic. Everybody had very strong feelings about it, and it is because of that that they could be easily taken advantage of by those people who had a strong political ideology in order to get people on their side. And it's because of those sensitive feelings and sensitive subject matter that led to the ostracizing and the polarizing nature of this topic. There is a lot of things you would have to unravel on these subjects. Now, does that mean that women were not harassed or minorities were not harassed, or that nobody went too far in talking about those issues and going too far into tactics? Absolutely not. There were a lot of people that decided there were no bad actions, just bad targets, and it was a no holds barred slugfest. That is something that made it quite nasty and made people not want to discuss it. There were other people who felt as though their friends being harassed, their friends were being ridiculed, and they went and said, I don't want to have anything to do with this. And while there were other people on the other side who felt that it was the other side that was doing all the harassing, there were still other people who were in fact willing just to say, you know what, I don't want to have anything to do with this fight. You guys can fight amongst themselves. I do care about these issues, but not enough in order to get into that kind of battlefield. And that's where Count Dracula found himself, as you saw in that that initial video he posted, this was the one thing, this was the one topic that he said almost broke Channel Awesome in half, because Chez Apocalypse wanted for everybody else to agree with them about those issues. And Count Chocula wanted to stay neutral, and Cal Calgren broke off his friendship with Count Chocula on the basis that you could not remain neutral about this topic. And that was the state of things throughout that whole year once that thing broke. That is why a lot of people squeamishly try to dance around it. Whenever that name comes up, people get scared in order to discuss anything that they bring up, because they bring up that term, they bring up that word. However, there are people who are doubting the type of harassment that Lindsay and the authoritarian left like her have been claiming, because this is also an interpretation situation. Now, of course, there are clear acts of vitriolic harassment. There are things that you can no doubt point to and say that is a form of harassment, that is a form of somebody that you need to either block on Twitter or you have to go to the authorities about. There are clear signs of things like that happening. However, when a rational thought, when a rational discussion gets called harassment, gets labeled harassment, it puts a black eye on these things, and I do believe that at the end of the day, it is the same thing that David Pakman and a lot of others have said. It makes it harder for those people who are actual victims of harassment, actual victims of sexual assault, to be able to speak up and have people believe them, because you also have people like Lindsay Ellis and those people on that side of the coin murking the waters and misinterpreting, maybe legitimately in order to get publicity, what they consider harassment. And this goes even worse because we also see that people are actually harassing Lindsay, are actually harassing those people, and they find the easy way in order to get out of having to answer to rational criticisms about their work, because they will lump that stuff together with the harassment and call it the same thing when there's clearly a firm difference. So forgive me if I seem to be doubtful, because I am, at least in Lindsay's case. However, I did say something about the 8chan debacle, the 8chan case, that I knew something about this. What I'm about to show you is something that came from r/drama Reddit page, and even though the message itself was initially deleted, someone did a snapshot of everything that had been put onto that post. And there are two things that we need to talk about here, one being a particular person in which Dan Olson was known to have been buddy-buddy with, well, two people he's known to have been buddy-buddy with, and since we're talking about chat logs, there is a particular other chat log, or a series of them, that will show us that Lindsay Ellis is completely lying about a certain aspect of this whole story. First of all, one of the people that he seemed to be buddy-buddy with was somebody by the name of Lorelei Bailey. Now, if the sheer name triggers you, then you already know some of this story. We're going to go into full detail about it. Lorelei Bailey was a former member of the hacker group LOL's Security, otherwise known as LOLSEC. The FBI raided her house. She is a transgender female, and keep in mind that has nothing to do with what her character is like. I'm just trying to give you the complete details about who she is. However, she had agreed to go undercover after the police questioned her for 4 straight hours before she decided to help them bust LOLSEC. LOLSEC was responsible for several things within the span of perhaps a week or so. I forget the exact time frame, but if you remember, in 2011 there was a hack of the Sony Pictures website. They were the ones that were responsible. They were saying that they were a offshoot of Anonymous, though Anonymous is denying that they had anything to do with it. Ever since then, Lorelei Bailey has been known to be a very despicable human being. She's been known to do several things, way too many to really list here, in which she will do whatever she can in order order to go after those people who dare to challenge her about anything she has ever done or said, or any of the opinions that she has. One of the most egregious things that she has done is, besides her faking committing suicide, is that she is the suspect of a unrelated rape case in which the person was happy that Lorelai Bailey had committed suicide because they go into firm detail about what had transpired on their Pastebin account. Now, first things first, I'm sharing this to you right now. Please be advised that that has extremely graphic language in it. Please be advised of that. I am doing that at the risk of my own account here, so you guys have the complete context of this. But the other thing that she had done after this all went down, after she returned to social media, is to force this particular victim into coming to Lorelai's defense in a court of law. Now, as with all these cases, it would not be fair to say that we need trust but verify in the Drew Wario sexual allegation case and not ask for the same thing here. These are speculatory. However, when we take a look at Lorelai Bailey's character and then compare that to what we thought was Drew Wario's character, then you will no doubt see that we could safely say that Lorelai Bailey was capable of this sort of thing. We didn't think that Drew Wario was capable of his own cardinal sins. So what does Lorelai Bailey have to do with any of this? Well, the conspiracy theory starts here. According to the r/drama post, Lorelai Bailey was the one that created what is called the HEBE forum on 8chan, the now defunct offshoot of 4chan, which had more relaxed rules than 4chan did. However, keep in mind, one of the main rules that 8chan seemed to have is that they do not allow child porn, and if they were able to catch it, they would do the right thing and take it down, and you would not be faring too well. It would not end well for you. Lorelai Bailey did not like 8chan, neither did Dan Olson. Dan Olson had a very deep obsession with trying to take down 8chan, and so did Lorelai Bailey, because the both of them did not like that term that Lindsay Ellis exemplified in her testimony. Now, you can think about that whole controversy all you want, however you want. However, what is claimed that Dan Olson and Lorelai Bailey did, either in cahoots with one another or a coincidence that one followed the other, might have not been the best way to go about it. What the conspiracy theory is that Lorelai Bailey planted the child pornography on the HEBE forum, and then Dan Olson found it, downloaded it onto his own computer, blurred out the offensive imagery, and then uploaded it onto his medium.com article saying that the mods are always asleep, in which if he had reported it to the authorities, if they reported it to 8chan, the chances are that 8chan could have done something about it. A you can't call what you can't see attitude. This got him in a ton of trouble because it is unclear as to whether or not Dan Olson is considered a journalist or not. In Canadian law, you are not allowed to even search for child pornography. If you do, and you are caught doing that, you are in a heap of trouble. However, journalists in Canada are given special treatment. If you are a journalist and you are doing investigative work, you are allowed to do certain things in order to proceed with your investigation. It is unclear as to whether or not Dan Olson could count as a journalist. He was writing for medium.com. So you might be able to say that maybe that counts as him being a journalist. He was having his journalistic license at that point. But the bottom line is that he was accused of doing that he downloaded the child pornography. And the way that it stands, if he found it on 8chan and then later on he went and he uploaded it onto medium.com, edited out, then how else would he be able to edit it if he did not download the imagery? Now, there is one thing that can say that perhaps they were working in tangent with each other, and that is where we get get into the other part of this whole story. Dan Olson was also friends with Zoe Quinn. She was the genesis behind everything that was transpiring in 2014, or perhaps what people thought was the genesis behind everything that transpired. Now, regardless of your opinion about everything that transpired in 2014, Zoe Quinn created what is now known as the Crash Override Network, which is supposed to be a anti-harassment and bullying organization that focuses mainly on Twitter harassment. However, there have been several criticisms about that particular organization, saying that they do not actually focus on harassment, but rather just protect that one person, being Zoe Quinn. That brings us to the big evidence that shows that not only did Dan Olson possibly break the law in this scenario, but that Lindsay Ellis was indeed lying about who called who to tell Mike Picard about this whole thing. In August of 2016, some chat logs came out, Skype chat logs, in which the members of what would be the Crash Override Network in 2014 talked about various people. Now, in these chat logs, keep in mind that Dr. Internet PhD is Zoe Quinn, and one of the people that was formerly a part of this whole network had since left the network and has changed his political viewpoint, that being Mills Chong, otherwise known as Still Gray on Twitter. I belabor this because it is him that confirmed that these chat logs were indeed factual. They were not doctored in any sort of way. And everything that Channel Awesome was being condemned for now, the Crash Override Network main people were the ones that were allegedly doing this kind of stuff to a lot of other people and not having any sort of remorse for it. They attacked people like Total Biscuit, Liana Kirshner, and full disclosure, somebody who I consider a very good friend of mine, Jenny Barrage. She is somebody who had came up with the site basedgamer.com, and she is somebody who I consider a good friend because she has helped me out through a lot of depression and anxiety throughout my time and has supported my channel. She has supported my content, and she is forever a cool person in my eyes. I had regretted when these things first came out that I did not do a public standing up for her. I did talk to her when these did come out in private. However, she didn't seem as though she was fazed by it. She was more seeing it as comedy than being angry about it. However, me being the loyal friend that I think I am, or that I try to be, I probably should have came out with a video explaining how upset I was that they had targeted her when these first came out. However, with the sensitive subject matter that they were going into in these chat logs, you could no doubt see how everybody was sort of squeamish by bringing these things up. Now, keep in mind that they could have gone after those people who did attack him through a more vitriolic stance. They did go after Mike Cernovich. They did rightfully say that he was bad news. However, that having been said, people like Total Biscuit and Liana Kirshner, who just wanted a rational discussion about things like transparency and media, they were also being attacked unfairly, I would believe. You may disagree with their politics, you may disagree with some of the opinions that they've had, but they have never went out of the way to try to harass anybody. And when they have been called upon certain things that they have said, they have later walked back and apologized about those actions. So it's not like they don't have a conscience here. But the reason that I want to bring this up is one particular point of this whole chat log. It's when they go to talk about 8chan and what they did there. First of all, even though Dan Olson himself does not say this, Ian Chong actually brings up that there was no way that Dan Olson could have edited those images without downloading them to begin with, which basically means that there would be a bunch of questions that Dan Olson would have to answer for. This shows that he was indeed friends with Zoe Quinn and that he was working with some questionable people in order to do whatever it is he wanted to really do. This was definitely not an anti-harassment organization. And the people who were involved in this whole chat log, involved in this chat, knew about it, and because he was a journalist, he probably got away with something. However, there is one other aspect that we need to talk about outside of everything everything else that puts Dan Olson in a bad light. Keep in mind that not only was he let go from Channel Awesome, he was also let go from Crash Override. The reason being, he was let go because they found out about his affiliation with Lorelai Bailey. They let him go around the summer of 2015, around the same time that he posted that he had left Channel Awesome after the quote-unquote trial period. This would force me to be extremely cynical about when Lindsay Ellis has said that her and Dan Olson and Cal Calgren actually left the site, because something does not add up there. She does not give the exact time frame in which she says that they left the site. Just a few days later. A few days later of what? The time in which she got the call from Mike McCod, because it was right before Christmas 2014, and he revealed everything about 9 months later. There is something not correct about what is being said there. But then there is this whole thing, the last line that he posts in this particular chat log at the 24th of December 2014 at 4:41:29 a.m. Yes, that is Christmas Eve, in which they're talking about this kind of stuff. He says, quote, "Alright, I think that's the majority of emails and phone calls and informing Channel Awesome about what's up. Now I can shower and go buy fabric so I can make crap. Make stuff," in all caps. So this is what this means. It is Dan Olson that, from what we see here, initiating the call to Channel Awesome, and in that matter, Mike McCod. So when we go back to the NSA document, we can clearly see that she had said that Mike McCod was not going to call Dan to find out what had happened, and instead Mike McCod called her. Now keep in mind that I have checked nearly every single little detail that there was in these documents, and from what I can gather, Dan Olson literally does not mention a word about Lindsay Ellis ever getting a phone call from Channel Awesome, from anybody even associated with Channel Awesome, in order to talk about what Dan Olson had done, quote unquote. He's talked about people being mad at the Meta channel, but he never mentions that Lindsay Ellis ever got a phone call that made her feel uncomfortable. And you would think that in this whole context, in everything in this context, if he would have heard about that particular conversation, then he would have talked about it with the people he thought were his closest friends, that being those people within this network. It makes you wonder whether or not this even happened, if this phone call even happened. What was the sequence of events? Did Ellis get the call first? Did Dan Olson call Channel Awesome? Did he call him and then Mike McCod called Lindsay Ellis? Or did this phone call ever happen? Is she making it all up? Is she making that phone call all up? Yes, she does label some dates. However, keep in mind that she is getting wrong, possibly when Dan Olson left Channel Awesome. That is very telling. What it definitely does is put major holes into her story. This was actually a complete lie, or perhaps she didn't know that Dan had already called Channel Awesome. He had already had a conversation with Dan Olson. This is why he found out about it. This is how he found out about it. This is how he got to needing to call Lindsay about this situation. And keep in mind, if this is the conspiracy theory that Lindsay Ellis is saying that Dan Olson is a victim of, then it is a conspiracy theory that his own so-called friends had ostracized him for. The relationship with Lorelai Bailey. If that is the case, then the conspiracy theory has some truth to it. The whole thing is, if you don't want conspiracy theories to begin to form, you have to stop letting the conspiracy theories have room to grow. If you don't want the fires to start, you don't give anybody the gasoline to start the fire with. And if we take Count Jacula's testimony as absolute gospel, in which I do believe that he's one of the more sane people to be talking about this sort of thing, because he was not in any one of these cliques in which they shut out people like Dr. Gonzo, and people like the Amazing Atheist was deemed as ultra toxic. The former was in the Not So Awesome document, the latter was not, but the two have corroborated each other's stories. And it seems that the majority of those that were in this not so awesome document were belonging to a sort of clique in some form or fashion. You can no doubt see why I would believe him over top of some other people. The Chez Apocalypse group wanted for people to not be neutral. That to them was the uncontroversial aspect. Not only did they not want anybody to be neutral, they wanted people to pick what they feel was the right side there. And whether or not you think they misrepresented what was going on, the fact of the matter is that they are accused of making Channel Awesome into a toxic work environment. Now, it might have not helped matters that Mike Picard was seen as sort of this Vince McMahon-esque style of running a business. Part of me wants to say that I would not be blaming him for being kind of on edge when you're dealing with people like authoritarians who just want to have extremist ways in order to enforce their otherwise good beliefs. Yes, we are for equality of genders, we are for equality of races, we are for equality on all fronts, but equality also means you are criticized as an equal as well. It does not mean that you are exempt from any form of criticism or any form of backlash if your character or your body of work is something that needs to be criticized, as long as it is in a constructive and rational manner. And in this case, I do believe that there are people who did criticize them in a rational and constructive manner that they had labeled in the same way as they were a vitriolic statement, in which they no doubt got those and found it easier in order to lump everything together than to actually address the constructive and rational criticisms. And if you want to talk about being quote-unquote controversial, what about what Malcolm Ray, Tamara Chambers, and the rest of the current Channel Awesome team have been put through on the back of all of this? Now you can say they are being ultra defensive or that they're taking the wrong side of history here, but the whole thing is that, first of all, how can you blame them? This is their livelihood. This is what they want to do for a living. They want to be able to act. They want to be able to perform. And this is something that is paying their bills. This is something that's keeping the roof over their heads and clothes on their back. If they do not have that, then where are they going to go? So you can no doubt see why they might get defensive. But there is another thing, and this has nothing to do with the notion that they might be getting paid a good amount of money, or that they are a part of that quote-unquote Chicago crew that they have been accused of being treated better than the other cast members at Channel Awesome. Maybe they have seen a different side of Mike Picard. Maybe they have seen a side of him that no one else has seen. Maybe they have seen things that we don't know about. Maybe they have heard of different things that we don't know about. And it's because of that maybe the reason why they're saying read the document is because of the same reason that I'm reading in this now, is because I don't feel like we have read the entirety of the document. I don't think we have read it in a more objective stance. I don't think we have read the response in a more objective stance. This is why we are acting with emotion. We can understand the emotional knee-jerk reactions to some of this stuff, but unless we look at things through a more objectable stance, we're never going to be able to get to the honest truth, regardless of whether or not we will like what the end result would be for that truth. That doesn't mean that Channel Awesome is completely innocent in any sort of way, but that also means that there are some things that the people involved in the NSA document need to answer to. That does not mean that we are rape apologists. That just means we want to get to the truth regardless of what that means. That is not a euphemism for anything. That is not a catchphrase for anything. It is to say that yes, we do want more context. We want to ask questions, because if you don't ask questions, you're not going to get to the truth. And as I've shown, some people might not be telling the entire truth on these sort of issues. I would have loved to see Dan Olson have his own section in the Not So Awesome document. Why did he not? In some ways, the people that are complaining about things like pay and publicity, these are bad things, but they are also petty in comparison to some of the more egregious claims of sexual assault and harassment and that sort of thing. It is a coincidence, I think, that it was the women that had those types of claims that Channel Awesome decided to focus on in their response. I do not think that was an intentional thing. I do believe that Chez Apocalypse had a big role in why Channel Awesome got as stressful as it did, in conjunction with the massive egos that seem to only be looking out for themselves half the time, according to what some people have said, and I am inclined to believe them on that regard. These were a lot of people who wanted to do their own thing as well and branch out at some point, and when they felt as though they got everything they needed to get out of that particular company, they were going to branch out and do their own thing, and that led to people not wanting to work as a team. That led to people not wanting to do things as a cohesive unit. They did not want to coexist. They had no intentions of coexisting. Some of the people did not. The Chez Apocalypse group had their own little clique, and while they were going to coexist with one another, they had no intentions and they couldn't be bothered to work well with other people who were outside of their own clique and did not subscribe completely to their ideological beliefs. That's why things imploded the way they did, and Channel Awesome should have the answer for a lot of those claims. Don't get me wrong. Even though I do enjoy their content, even though I do enjoy the Nostalgia Critics content and everything that goes along with it, I cannot deny that Channel Awesome has some things to answer for. That having been said, however, some of the people on the Not So Awesome document also have the answer for a lot of things. Mainly Lindsay Ellis, mainly Lupa, and mainly Holly Brown. Maybe there are other people who we are not seeing, but those are the main three. And I do believe the reason why Channel Awesome has not come out with a blanket apology or a long form apology is because I do have a funny suspicion that the way Obscurus Lupa has been talking, and with how Lindsay Ellis is not exactly being truthful with what she is saying, I have reason to suspect that perhaps they don't want it to end with just an apology. They want them to admit guilt so they can file a lawsuit. That's where I think this is going. This is where I think this is headed. If they get a blanket apology, they could then use that against them in the court of law. This is the right to remain silent in the form of Channel Awesome. They want for Channel Awesome to admit guilt even when they honestly do not believe that they have done anything of the sort of what they are claiming to have been doing. Why would you admit guilt to something you don't think you've done? That is why I do believe that a blanket apology would not come. If they truly did believe that they did something wrong, then they would have came out and did a blanket apology a long time ago. But they are adamant in believing that they have acted in due diligence, that they have done the things that some people have said they have not done. And with the ball in the content creators court, it now makes it a they said scenario. It then puts the burden of proof onto the content creators to be able to prove that yes, indeed, it happened the way that they have said it did. Regardless of whether or not you think that the chat logs from the Channel Awesome side are not proving anything, the fact of the matter is that those are receipts. Those are going to be put in as conclusive evidence. And unless they can come up with something that could prove that yes, they're the ones that are correct in that regard, then Channel Awesome would win a lawsuit. They would win as defendants. And I think that is why you're seeing the blowback about why there is no blanket apology, or why did they reveal the day of the True Wario stuff, and so on and so forth. That evidence is pretty damning, and that is why I do believe they want Count Chakra to take his video down. It has nothing to do with worrying about the identity of the perpetrator or the victim. I believe it has something more to do with trying to make sure that part of the story does not get out. And as I said before, I am aware of that there is more than one person who has claimed to be sexually assaulted, and yes, I have already discussed that earlier on in this video. But the bottom line here is this: the reason I'm making this video in the first place is not to pile on to what is already a very messy situation. It is to inform people that we are not looking at things objectively, and if we don't do it on this one, who else is going to become the victim in that sort of scenario? If we let the knee-jerk reactions, if we let the emotional reactions be the objective reaction, then who are we going to hurt next? Who is going to be the victim to our pitchforks and torches? And are they going to be deserving of it? If we don't take things with an objective stance, we are going to fail now what the justice system is being used for. Though you may disagree with some verdicts, the fact of the matter is that there's a reason why the justice statue has a blindfold on. We need to stop attacking the current Channel Awesome producers. There is a reason why they are blocking people. I don't blame them for doing that. There is a reason why they are feeling stressed out. It is because this is a non-stop brigade on them. Even those people who are in the NSA document is saying to stop that, and I am going to echo that sentiment. That is the one thing that they do get right. You need to stop it now, because we are better than this. We should be better than that. We need to be better than that. Even though you might not necessarily agree with their stance, you have to respect that, because of what it means for them if Channel Awesome goes under, if the Nostalgia Critic goes under. What happens to their careers? What happens in their aspects? Of course they're going to defend it. Of course they're going to say something about it, but not just because they're getting paid or anything like that. It's because they feel as though that is their job, that is their livelihood. Let's see you have your back against the wall like that, and let's see how you handle it. Maybe they're not handling it in the best way, but whoever does. The fact of the matter is that I do not think this is over by any stretch of the imagination. I would hope that the people who are watching this had taken what I have said into account, what I have shown into account, and hopefully in the future we look at things more objectively. In closing, I would invite anyone from Channel Awesome who used to be a part of Channel Awesome, more importantly those that are named Count Jacklar or Mackay Curtis, in order to be able to be interviewed, because I would love to hear their personal sides of all of this going on. I understand they may want to move on from all of this, but apparently I do believe that there are some people who are willing to keep throwing salt on these wounds. I'm talking about Scooter Slooper and Lindsay Ellis. I have seen no one actually offer a hand to interview them yet, so let me extend that olive branch. If anybody on that side wants to be interviewed by somebody who is talking about this sort of thing, please let me know. My contact info is always on my channel page. Please get back to me whenever you can. I hope this wasn't too long of a video and that you got through it without being extremely annoyed by the sound of my voice. My name is JD Shadow, and that just happened.